Victoria Grant had fired 3 board members before lunch. She did not raise her voice when she did it. She did not slam her fist on the conference table or make dramatic threats. She simply pulled up the quarterly performance reports on the screen in the Stamford, Connecticut boardroom on the 62nd floor of the Grant Medical Holdings Tower, pointed to the numbers that told the story better than any speech ever could, and told 3 grown men in expensive suits that their services were no longer required. One of them tried to argue. He leaned forward in his chair, loosened his tie, and started talking about how long he had been in the healthcare industry. 30 years, he said. 30 years of experience. Victoria looked at him with those sharp, deep brown eyes that had ended more arguments than most people had ever started, and she said one sentence. 30 years of experience should have taught you how to read a revenue report. The room went silent. The man closed his mouth, picked up his briefcase, and walked out. The other 2 followed without a word. By 2 in the afternoon, Victoria had shut down a hostile takeover attempt from a competing healthcare firm that thought they could sneak a buyout offer past her legal team while she was distracted with the board shakeup. She caught it, dismantled it in a single phone call to her attorneys, and sent the competing firm a polite but devastating email that essentially told them to never try that again. By 5, she told a billionaire investor who had been circling Grant Medical Holdings for months that he could either match her terms exactly as she had laid them out, or he could lose her number and find someone else to invest in. The investor matched her terms by 6. That was a regular Tuesday for Victoria Grant. She was 29 years old, fair-skinned black woman with high cheekbones, full lips, and a jawline that looked like it had been sculpted specifically to intimidate people in professional settings. Her natural hair was always pulled back in a clean, low bun that said she did not have time for distractions. Her wardrobe was sharp. Tailored blazers, straight-leg trousers, heels that clicked against marble floors like a countdown to whatever she was about to say next. She ran one of the fastest-growing private healthcare empires on the entire East Coast, and she did it all from that corner office in Stamford with a view that stretched out over the Connecticut skyline, like a reminder that she had earned every single inch of the view. Nobody intimidated Victoria. Nobody made her second-guess a decision. Nobody made her palms sweat or her thoughts scatter or her voice waver. She had built a reputation that walked into rooms before she did, and by the time she actually arrived, most people had already decided not to challenge her. She was untouchable, unbothered, absolutely and completely in control of every room, every conversation, every negotiation she walked into. That was the version of herself she believed in. That was the version everybody else believed in too. And every single word of it was true. Right up until the night Kang Yi-sung walked into her life and made her realize that the most terrifying thing in the world was not failure. It was not betrayal. It was not losing her company or her reputation or her money. It was the possibility of losing him. And by the time she understood that, it was almost too late. It started at a healthcare summit in Stamford. Victoria was the keynote speaker, which surprised no one. She had built Grant Medical Holdings from a single urgent care clinic in Bridgeport, Connecticut, into a company now valued at $400 million. She had done it with no family money, no trust fund, no wealthy husband writing checks behind the scenes. She grew up in Bridgeport, raised by a single mother named Lorraine who worked the night shift as a nurse at a local hospital. Victoria put herself through Columbia for undergrad, then Wharton for her MBA, and came back to Connecticut with a plan that everyone told her was too ambitious and that she executed anyway. The keynote went exactly as expected. Victoria commanded the room. She spoke about the future of privatized healthcare in America, about innovation, about the gap between what patients deserved and what the system gave them. She was precise, confident, and sharp. When an older man in the third row tried to interrupt her with a condescending question, she answered it so thoroughly that the audience applauded. After the keynote, there was a VIP reception. Victoria moved through the room the way she always did, with purpose. She shook hands, exchanged business cards, deflected compliments with a short nod and a redirect to business. Then she saw him. Across the room, surrounded by a small circle of people but somehow looking completely separate from all of them, there was a man who did not look like he belonged at a healthcare summit. Not because he was out of place. He looked like he owned the place. But there was something about him that did not fit the usual mold of American healthcare executives. Something quieter, heavier, more controlled. Kang Yi-sung, 34 years old. Tall, lean, sharp jawline, black hair pushed back from his forehead. He wore a dark suit that fit him so precisely it looked like it had been sewn onto his body. His posture was perfect, not stiff, just perfectly aligned, like a man who had been trained from birth to carry weight without showing it. He was the CEO of the Kang Syndicate Group, a legitimate global conglomerate rooted in Seoul, South Korea. The company spanned luxury real estate, high-end hospitality, private security firms, and elite medical technology. They were worth billions. They operated in 14 countries. But the Kang name carried a different kind of weight in certain circles. The family legacy was once tied to the old Korean underworld. Generations ago, the Kangs were one of the most powerful families in Korea's organized networks. That era was over. Yi-sung's generation operated entirely within the law, running legitimate businesses that had nothing to do with the old ways. But the reputation had never fully faded. People still whispered about the Kang family. People still called Yi-sung a mafia boss behind his back. He never corrected them. He never needed to. Victoria watched him from across the room for exactly 4 seconds before she looked away. 4 seconds was a lot for Victoria. She did not usually give anyone more than 2. Then he approached her. He did not compliment her speech. He did not introduce himself with his title or his company name. He walked up to her, stood exactly the right distance away, not too close and not too far, looked her directly in the eyes, and said that he disagreed with her keynote point about privatizing emergency care networks. He said he thought her model would create access gaps in lower-income communities, and he would like to discuss it further if she had a moment. Victoria stared at him. People did not walk up to Victoria Grant after a keynote and tell her they disagreed with her. People nodded. People praised. People asked for her business card. They did not challenge her. But this man was not performing disagreement. He was not trying to prove he was smart or important. He was genuinely interested in the discussion. She could see it in his eyes. They were dark, steady, completely focused on her, and there was an intelligence behind them that she recognized immediately because she saw it every morning in her own mirror. They debated for 20 minutes. It was sharp, fast, electric. He challenged her data. She challenged his assumptions. He pushed back on her projections. She dismantled his counterpoints with evidence. Neither of them backed down. Neither of them wanted to. Somewhere around the 12-minute mark, Victoria realized she was enjoying this. Not tolerating it. Not enduring it. Genuinely enjoying being challenged by another person for the first time in longer than she could remember. When they finally parted, Victoria walked to her car, sat in the driver's seat, and realized her heart was beating faster than it had been on stage. She told herself it was adrenaline from the argument. She was lying. Now let me ask you something. When is the last time you met someone who made you feel like you finally found your equal? Someone who did not back down, did not fold, did not try to impress you but just stood right there and matched your energy. If you already know what that feels like, go ahead and hit that like button right now. And if you are not subscribed to this channel yet, subscribe because I promise you, this story is about to take turns you will never see coming. Now, let's continue. 2 weeks later, Victoria was in her Manhattan office reviewing quarterly projections when her chief strategy officer, a sharp woman named Fiona Park, walked in with a folder and a look on her face that Victoria recognized immediately. It was the look Fiona got when she had found something big. The folder contained a proposal. Kang Syndicate Group wanted to partner with Grant Medical Holdings on a cutting-edge medical technology initiative. They had developed biotech in Seoul that was years ahead of anything currently available in American hospitals. Surgical precision tools, AI-driven diagnostics, patient monitoring systems that could predict complications before they happened. They wanted to bring this technology into U.S. private hospitals, starting with facilities in Palo Alto, California, and Scottsdale, Arizona, two of the wealthiest healthcare markets in the country. The deal was worth over $120 million. It was the single biggest opportunity Victoria had ever been presented with. There was one condition. Yi-sung would be personally overseeing the partnership. He wanted face-to-face meetings throughout the process. No intermediaries, no video calls. He wanted to work directly with Victoria. Victoria read the proposal twice. She sat back in her chair and pressed her fingertips together the way she always did when she was thinking hard about something. Every business instinct she had told her this deal was extraordinary. The numbers were strong. The technology was legitimate. The market potential was massive. But something about Yi-sung unsettled her, not in a way she could name, not in a way that showed up on a spreadsheet or a risk assessment. It was deeper than that, more personal, and Victoria did not like personal. She accepted the deal anyway, because Victoria Grant did not run from anything. Their first official meeting took place in a private conference space in Hudson Yards, Manhattan. Yi-sung arrived with his right-hand man, a Korean man named Jun-ho who had the kind of eyes that tracked every movement in a room without appearing to look at anything. He said very little. He did not need to. His presence alone communicated that he was not someone to be taken lightly. Victoria arrived with her attorney, Trenton Pierce, a tall man with wire-rimmed glasses and a calm demeanor, and her CFO. The meeting was professional. Terms, projections, logistics, timelines. Standard partnership discussions that Victoria had conducted 100 times before. But underneath every exchange between Victoria and Yi-sung, there was something else happening, a tension that had nothing to do with business. He watched her in a way that was not predatory but deeply attentive, like he was studying not just what she said but how she thought. At one point, Victoria's attorney Trenton raised a cautious objection about one of the contract clauses, and Victoria dismantled it with a single sentence. She caught Yi-sung almost smiling. Almost. The corner of his mouth lifted for half a second before he controlled it. After the meeting, Yi-sung asked her to walk with him. They stepped out onto a terrace overlooking the Manhattan skyline. The city stretched out beneath them, noisy and alive and completely indifferent to whatever was happening between two people on a terrace 60 stories up. Yi-sung told her something she did not expect. He said he did not bring this deal to her because of her company's growth metrics. He said he brought it to her because he watched a video of her commencement speech at Howard University, where she told graduates that real power is not the ability to control others, but the ability to never be controlled. He said his own grandmother taught him that exact philosophy when he was 9 years old, sitting on the floor of her house in Seoul. Victoria did not know what to do with that moment. It was disarming in a way she was not prepared for. She defaulted to business and told him she would have her team review the full proposal by Friday. He nodded and said he looked forward to it, but the way he said it made it sound like he was looking forward to something beyond contracts and clauses. That night, back in her penthouse in Stamford, Victoria could not sleep. She paced her living room in an old Wharton t-shirt and sweatpants, which was a version of herself that absolutely no one in the business world would ever see. She called Deandra Washington at midnight. Deandra was her oldest friend. They had known each other since middle school in Bridgeport. Deandra was now a trauma surgeon at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, which meant she was one of the few people on Earth who could match Victoria's intensity and stubbornness. Victoria told her about the deal, but she kept circling back to Yi-sung, his eyes, the way he listened, the way he challenged her without trying to diminish her, the grandmother's story. Deandra caught it immediately. She said Victoria had never once in her entire life called her at midnight to talk about a business partner. Victoria denied everything, told Deandra she was reading too much into it, and hung up. She lay on her bed, stared at the ceiling, and whispered to herself that she was being ridiculous. She fell asleep with her phone on the pillow next to her, the screen still showing Yi-sung's contact information from the meeting earlier that day. Over the next month, Victoria and Yi-sung were in each other's orbit constantly. They met in Palo Alto for a site visit at a private hospital that was being considered for the first biotech installation. They walked through surgical suites together, discussing specifications and integration timelines, and Victoria noticed that Yi-sung asked the hospital staff questions with genuine curiosity, not the performative interest she saw from most executives who only cared about the bottom line. They met in Scottsdale for a facility tour, walking through a state-of-the-art medical center surrounded by desert mountains and dry heat that made Victoria's skin feel tight. During a break, they sat in the hospital courtyard and talked for 45 minutes about things that had nothing to do with business. He told her about growing up in Seoul as the heir to the Kang family name, the weight of it, the expectations. She told him about watching her mother Lorraine come home from night shifts, so exhausted she could barely make it up the stairs. Neither of them was trying to impress the other. They were just being honest. Back in Manhattan for contract negotiations, they worked late into the evening in a conference room on the 48th floor. Coffee cups and legal documents spread across the table. At one point, they were arguing about a revenue-sharing clause, their voices overlapping, both of them leaning forward in their chairs, when they suddenly stopped at the same time and looked at each other and realized they were both smiling. Victoria noticed small things about him that she tried not to notice but could not help it. The way he always poured water for everyone at the table before himself. The way he spoke Korean to Junho in soft, quick tones that sounded almost musical. The way he listened without interrupting, without checking his phone, without that glazed expression she had seen on the face of every other man she had ever sat across from in a professional setting. He was genuinely present, every single time. He noticed things about her too. She could tell. He mentioned once, casually, that she always tapped her pen 3 times on the table before she was about to make a decisive point. She did not know she did that. Nobody had ever noticed it before. The fact that he noticed it unsettled her in a way she did not want to examine. One evening during a late working dinner in Palo Alto, after hours of negotiating a particularly complex clause in the partnership agreement, the conversation shifted. The business talk dried up and a silence settled between them. It was not uncomfortable. It was just open, waiting. Yi-sung asked her a simple question. He said, "Who takes care of you?" Victoria laughed. It was a quick, automatic laugh. She said she takes care of herself. She always had, she always would. He did not laugh. He looked at her across the table with those steady, dark eyes and said, "That is not what I asked." The silence that followed was heavy, not awkward, heavy, like the air between them had thickened and was pressing against something inside Victoria's chest. She felt something shift, not painfully, not dramatically, but noticeably, like a wall she had forgotten she built had just moved half an inch. She changed the subject. She asked about the installation timeline for the Scottsdale facility. He let her change it. He did not push. But his eyes stayed on her for a moment longer than necessary, and she knew he understood exactly what had just happened. She changed the subject because she was scared of the answer she might give, not because she did not have one. Meanwhile, 1,500 miles away in Naples, Florida, a man named Reginald Cross sat in the study of his $12 million waterfront estate and stared at a report on his desk. Reginald Cross was 51 years old. Silver hair, deep tan, the kind of face that looked like it had been handsome once, but had been hardened by decades of ruthless ambition. He ran Cross Dominion Health, a competing healthcare conglomerate that operated hospitals and clinics across the southeastern United States. He was rich. He was connected, and he had been trying to acquire Grant Medical Holdings for 2 years. Victoria had rejected every single offer, every meeting, every call, every carefully crafted proposal. She told him no so many times that Reginald had started to take it personally, and Reginald Cross did not handle rejection well. Now he was reading about the Kang Syndicate partnership. $120 million. Expansion into the wealthiest markets in the country. If Victoria closed this deal, Grant Medical Holdings would become untouchable, and his chance of ever acquiring her company would vanish permanently. Reginald picked up his phone and made a call. The contact in his phone was listed simply as GMH inside. The phone rang twice. A voice answered. A voice that belonged to someone inside Victoria's company, someone close to her, someone she trusted. I need everything, Reginald said. Financial documents, internal projections, data reports, everything she has on this Kang deal, and I need it by the end of the week. The voice on the other end hesitated for a moment, then agreed. Victoria had no idea that someone in her inner circle had just betrayed her. She was still in Palo Alto, sitting across from Yi-sung, trying to convince herself that the shift she felt in her chest meant nothing. The story broke on a Wednesday morning. Victoria was in her Stamford office reviewing installation specs when Fiona burst through the door without knocking, which she had never done before. Fiona's face was tight. She held out her phone and showed Victoria a headline from a major business news outlet. Grant Medical Holdings, accused of falsifying patient data in bid for Korean tech partnership. Victoria read it twice. Then she put the phone down slowly and said, "Pull up the article." The article was devastating. It cited leaked internal documents from Grant Medical Holdings that allegedly showed the company had inflated its patient outcome data to make itself look more attractive to Kang's syndicate group. The documents looked official. They had Grant Medical Holdings headers, file numbers, internal timestamps. If Victoria had not known they were false, she would have believed them herself. Her phone started ringing and did not stop. Board members, investors, business partners, media outlets requesting comment. Her inbox flooded with emails from people she had worked with for years, all of them asking the same thing. Is this true? Victoria's stock of credibility, built over nearly a decade of relentless work, was crumbling in a single news cycle. She stood at her office window looking out over the Connecticut skyline and did what she always did in a crisis. She went completely still. She did not panic. She did not cry. She breathed in through her nose, held it for 4 seconds, and exhaled slowly. Then she turned around and started making phone calls. The first call that mattered came from Yi-sung. His voice was calm but serious. He told her that Kang Syndicate Group could not proceed with the partnership while these allegations were active. His board and soul was pressuring him to pull out entirely. The Kang family had spent decades cleaning their reputation, building a legitimate global brand. They could not afford to be associated with a company accused of data fraud. He told her something else, too. He said he did not believe the allegations. But belief is not enough, he said. I need proof that the data is clean. Victoria's throat tightened, not from the business implications, from the sound of his voice, the steadiness of it, the fact that even now, even with his entire board breathing down his neck, he was still telling her he believed her. She said she understood. She said she would handle it. Her voice did not waver. She hung up the phone and sat in her chair for 3 full minutes without moving. Then she stood up and got to work. She launched a full internal audit. Every data point, every report, every patient outcome file her company had ever produced. She brought in an independent forensics team to examine the documents that had been leaked to the press. She worked 18-hour days for a straight week. Her meals were coffee and protein bars eaten standing up in her office. Deendra flew up from Baltimore on the 3rd day and practically forced her to eat a real meal. She sat in Victoria's office with a bag of takeout and watched Victoria eat with one hand while typing emails with the other. You need to sleep, Deendra said. I will sleep when my name is clean, Victoria said. Her mother, Lorraine, called every night from Bridgeport. Lorraine did not understand the specifics of the business world, but she understood her daughter. She told Victoria to come home and rest. Victoria said she could not yet. During the audit, Victoria's forensics team found something that made her stomach drop. Some of the internal financial documents in her company's system had been accessed and altered. Not from outside, from inside. Someone with internal credentials had logged into the system and changed data to make it look falsified, then made sure those altered files were the ones that ended up in the hands of the journalist who wrote the article. Victoria realized this was not just an external attack. This was sabotage from someone she trusted, someone inside her own walls. She looked at the access logs. The credentials used belonged to a senior member of her team. But the logs had been partially scrubbed, making it impossible to identify the exact person without deeper forensic analysis. Someone close to her had done this, and she did not yet know who. While Victoria fought her battle publicly, Yi-sung was making moves she knew nothing about. Despite telling his sole board he would pause the partnership, he quietly dispatched Junho to investigate the source of the leaked documents. The Kang family might have left the old world behind, but they still had resources, contacts, people who were very skilled at finding information that did not want to be found. Yi-sung told Junho to find out who wanted Victoria destroyed and why. He did not tell Victoria he was doing this. He knew her well enough by now to know she would refuse the help. She would tell him to stay out of it. She would handle it herself like she handled everything else. But Yi-sung also knew something Victoria did not want to admit to herself. The people who did this were playing a game she was not built for. She was built for boardrooms and negotiations and building things from the ground up. She was not built for the kind of warfare where someone smiles at you in a meeting and then puts a knife in your back when you turn around. Yi-sung was built for that, whether he wanted to be or not. Victoria flew to New York on a Friday morning to meet Yi-sung in person. She carried a flash drive containing the complete results of her internal audit and the independent forensic analysis. They met in a private office in Midtown that Yi-sung had arranged, just the two of them, no attorneys, no advisors. She plugged the flash drive into a laptop and walked him through everything, every file, every data point, every piece of evidence proving that her patient outcome data was legitimate and always had been. The falsified documents that had been leaked to the press were planted. Her forensics team had proven it. Yi-sung reviewed everything carefully. He scrolled through the files, read the forensic timestamps, studied the data trails. When he finished, he looked up at her. "I already knew," he said. Victoria frowned. "What do you mean you already knew?" Yi-sung told her everything. Junho had traced the leaked documents back through a chain of shell companies, dummy email accounts, and intermediary contacts. Every trail led to the same destination, Cross Dominion Health, Reginald Cross. Victoria felt the anger rise in her chest like heat. Reginald Cross. The man who had been circling her company like a vulture for 2 years. The man she had dismissed as a nuisance. An aging executive who could not accept that a 29-year-old black woman had built something he could not buy. She had underestimated how far he would go. Then Yi-sung said something that stopped her cold. Junho found something else. His voice was careful now, measured, like he was choosing his words precisely because he knew the impact they would have. The altered data inside your company. The files that were changed from the inside. They were accessed using Trenton Pierce's login credentials. Victoria did not move. Trenton Pierce, her attorney, one of the first people she hired when she built the company 5 years ago. He had been in every major meeting. He had reviewed every contract. He had access to every sensitive file in her system. She trusted him with information that could make or break her company. She trusted him. "Are you sure?" she asked. Her voice was steady, but something underneath it was cracking. Yi-sung nodded. He did not look away from her. He held her gaze with the kind of quiet steadiness that she was beginning to realize was the most honest thing about him. That night, Victoria confronted Trenton at her Manhattan office. She did not call ahead. She did not schedule a meeting. She simply texted him and told him she needed to discuss something urgent about the partnership agreement. He arrived at 8 in the evening, looking slightly frazzled but otherwise normal. Smiling, carrying his laptop bag, asking her if she wanted him to pull up the latest contract revisions. Victoria was sitting behind her desk. The lights in the office were low. She did not stand up when he walked in. She did not smile. She simply placed a printed copy of the forensic access log on the desk, turned it so it faced him, and asked one question. "How much did Reginald pay you?" Trenton looked at the document. His face went through several stages in rapid succession. Confusion, recognition, fear, and finally something that looked like relief. The kind of relief that comes when a secret you have been carrying for months is finally too heavy to hold. He broke. He told her everything. He was $300,000 in debt from a brutal divorce that had drained his savings and destroyed his credit. Reginald Cross found out about the debt through a mutual contact and approached him with an offer. Clear the debt entirely in exchange for internal access to Grant Medical Holdings' financial documents and data reports. Trenton agreed because he thought it was just competitive intelligence gathering. He thought Reginald wanted leverage for a buyout negotiation. He never imagined it would turn into a full-scale campaign to destroy Victoria's reputation. "I never wanted this to happen," Trenton said. His voice was shaking. "I just needed the money. I was drowning. I did not think he would go this far." Victoria looked at him for a long time. She did not yell. She did not curse. She did not throw anything. She just looked at him with those deep brown eyes that had fired board members and shut down hostile takeovers and made billionaires back down. "Get out," she said. "If you contact me again, if you contact anyone at this company again, my legal team will make sure you never practice law anywhere in this country." Trenton stood up. He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something else. Then he closed it. He picked up his bag and walked out of the office without another word. The door clicked shut. Victoria sat behind her desk for about 30 seconds. Then she stood up, walked to the far corner of her office where the windows met the wall, and slid down to the floor. She sat there with her back against the wall, her knees pulled up to her chest, and cried. Not loud, not dramatic, just silent tears running down her face in steady streams. She had built everything from nothing. She had worked harder than anyone she knew. She had sacrificed relationships, sleep, comfort, years of her life. And someone she trusted, someone she let inside her walls, had sold her out for money. Her phone buzzed on the desk. She almost ignored it, but something made her stand up and look. It was a text from Yi Sung. One line. "You are the strongest person I have ever met, and I am not going anywhere." Victoria read it 3 times. She did not respond. She did not know what to say. But she held the phone against her chest with both hands, pressed it there like it was keeping something inside her from falling apart, and stood in the dark office until her breathing was steady again. Victoria held a press conference 3 days later from Grant Medical Holdings headquarters in Stamford. She stood behind a podium with the company logo behind her, dressed in a perfectly tailored navy suit, her hair pulled back, her expression calm and composed. She did not scream, she did not rant, she did not play the victim. She presented the full internal audit showing every piece of patient data Grant Medical Holdings had ever produced was legitimate and verifiable. She showed the independent forensic analysis, proving the leaked documents had been fabricated and planted from outside the company. She laid out the digital trail linking the fabricated documents to a series of shell companies that traced directly back to Cross Dominion Health. Then she named Reginald Cross publicly. She said his name clearly and calmly, looking directly into the cameras. She said he orchestrated a campaign of corporate sabotage designed to destroy her company's reputation and force a buyout. She said she had evidence. She said she had turned that evidence over to federal investigators. The room erupted with questions. Victoria answered every single one of them without flinching. The media cycle flipped within hours. By the next morning, Reginald Cross was trending on every business news platform in the country. His stock dropped. His board called an emergency meeting. Federal investigators opened a formal inquiry into Cross Dominion Health. Victoria's reputation was not just restored, it was elevated. People started calling her the most fearless woman in American healthcare. Business magazines requested interviews. Her inbox filled with partnership offers from companies that had been watching from the sidelines. 1 week later, Yi Sung called a joint press conference with Victoria in Manhattan. He announced that Kang Syndicate Group was not only reinstating the partnership with Grant Medical Holdings, they were expanding it. The deal was now worth $200 million, with biotech installation rolling out across premium facilities in Beverly Hills, California, Atherton, California, and Paradise Valley, Arizona, 3 of the wealthiest communities in the entire country. They stood side by side at the podium. Victoria spoke about the technology. Yi Sung spoke about the partnership's long-term vision. They were professional, polished, perfectly coordinated. But the chemistry between them was visible to every single person in that room. The way they glanced at each other between answers. The way Yi Sung's hand rested on the podium inches from hers. The way Victoria's voice softened almost imperceptibly when she referenced his company's contribution to the initiative. A reporter in the front row asked if their partnership was strictly professional. Yi Sung gave a calm, measured answer about business alignment and shared vision. Victoria added nothing, but her eyes lingered on him for a beat too long after he finished speaking. She caught herself and looked away. The internet noticed anyway. By that evening, clips of the press conference were circulating on social media with captions like, "Somebody explain the tension between these two. And this is not just business." After the press conference, they were alone in a private car heading back to Yi Sung's hotel in Tribeca. The leather seats were cool. The city moved past the tinted windows in a blur of light and noise. The silence between them was different now, not professional, not careful, charged, full. Victoria spoke first. "I never thanked you," she said. She was looking straight ahead through the windshield. "For investigating, for believing me when the whole world thought I was a fraud, for the text." Yi Sung looked at her. His expression was calm, the way it always was, but there was something behind his eyes that was not calm at all. Something that had been there since Stamford. "You do not need to thank me," he said. "I did not do it because I am your business partner." Victoria turned to face him. "I did it because from the moment I heard you speak at that summit, something in me recognized something in you, and I have not been able to look away since." The car was quiet, just the hum of the engine and the muffled sounds of Manhattan outside. Victoria's breath caught. She felt her heartbeat in her throat. She did not pull away. She did not deflect with a joke or redirect to business. She just looked at him and said the truest thing she had said out loud in years. "I do not know how to do this. I have spent my whole life making sure I never needed anyone, because needing someone means they can destroy you." Yi Sung reached across the space between them and took her hand. He did not squeeze it. He did not pull her closer. He just held it, gently. Like he understood that she was handing him something fragile, and he was not going to drop it. "I am not asking you to need me," he said. "I am asking you to let me stand beside you. There is a difference." Victoria looked down at his hand holding hers. Then she interlocked her fingers with his, slowly, deliberately, like she was making a decision she had been thinking about for weeks. Neither of them said another word for the rest of the drive. Reginald Cross was cornered. His reputation was in freefall. His company was hemorrhaging investors. Federal investigators were circling. He had nothing left to protect and nothing left to lose. And desperate men with nothing to lose are the most dangerous men alive. He made one final move. He filed a massive federal lawsuit against Grant Medical Holdings alleging fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy. But he did not stop there. He named Kang's syndicate group as a co-conspirator. And in the lawsuit, he deliberately and repeatedly invoked the Kang family's old underworld reputation, painting Yi Sung as a foreign criminal influence infiltrating the American healthcare system through his partnership with Victoria. The lawsuit was legally baseless. Every attorney who read it said it would never survive a motion to dismiss. But it was not designed to win in court. It was designed to win in the media. And it worked. Headlines exploded across every cable news channel and business outlet. Korean mafia ties alleged in healthcare deal. Is Victoria Grant being manipulated by a foreign criminal enterprise? Talking heads on cable news debated the Kang family history. Old photographs of Yi Sung's grandfather were pulled from archives and displayed on screens next to current photos of Yi Sung. The implication was clear and ugly. They were calling him a criminal because of his family name and his nationality. The pressure hit Yi Sung from both sides of the Pacific. In Seoul, his board of directors demanded an emergency meeting. The American media attention was threatening the Kang brand globally. Contracts in Europe and Asia were suddenly being reviewed. Business partners were getting nervous. The board told Yi-sung in no uncertain terms that he needed to cut all ties with Victoria Grant and Grant Medical Holdings immediately and return to Seoul. Then his uncle called, Chairman Kang D1, 73 years old, the patriarch of the family, the man who had spent 40 years transforming the Kang name from a symbol of the old underworld into a respected global brand. His uncle did not yell. The Kang family did not yell. He simply said that if Yi-sung did not withdraw from the American partnership, the board would vote to remove him as CEO. Not a threat, a statement of fact. Yi-sung flew to Stamford. He arrived at Victoria's penthouse in the evening. She opened the door and saw his face and knew immediately that something was wrong, not because he looked upset, because he looked controlled. Too controlled. The kind of control that meant something underneath was under enormous pressure. They sat in her living room. He told her everything. The board, his uncle, the vote to remove him. Victoria listened with her jaw tight and her hands clasped together in her lap. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she spoke. Go, she said. Yi-sung looked at her. Go back to Seoul, protect your company, protect your family, walk away from this partnership and walk away from me. Her voice was steady, professional, the same voice she used in boardrooms. I have survived worse than this on my own. Yi-sung studied her face. He could see what she was doing. She was putting the walls back up, brick by brick, rebuilding every defense she had spent the last 2 months slowly letting him dismantle. She was trying to make this easy for him by making herself hard again. He stood up. Victoria braced herself. She prepared for him to nod and walk to the door and fly back to Seoul and become a memory she would eventually learn to stop thinking about. Instead, he looked at her and said, My grandmother once told me something. She said the Kang family survived wars, occupations, empires that tried to erase us from history, not because we ran from fights, but because we chose which fights were worth everything. He paused. You are worth everything. Victoria felt the air leave her lungs. I am not leaving, he said. I will handle my board my way. He walked to the door and left, not because he was walking away from her, but because he had a phone call to make that would determine the rest of his career and possibly the rest of his life. Victoria stood alone in her penthouse after the door closed. She realized she was shaking, not from anger, not from the lawsuit, not from the fear of losing her company or her reputation. She was shaking because she was afraid of losing him, truly, deeply, fundamentally afraid in a way she had never experienced before. She had never feared failure. She had stared down hostile takeovers and predatory investors and public attacks without blinking. She had never feared loneliness because she had trained herself to treat it as a feature, not a flaw. But the thought of Yi-sung walking away from her and never coming back made her feel a terror that had no blueprint, no playbook, no strategic response. She picked up her phone and called Deendra. Deendra answered on the second ring. She could hear something in Victoria's voice immediately. She asked what happened. Victoria said 4 words she had never said before in her life. I think I love him. The line was quiet for a moment. Then Deendra spoke. I know you do. Now fight for it. Yi-sung did not beg his board. He did not plead with his uncle. He did not make emotional appeals or ask for sympathy. He did what a Kang does. He moved strategically. He called an emergency shareholder meeting in Seoul via secure video conference from New York. When the faces of the Kang Syndicate Group board filled the screen, including his uncle's stone-carved expression, Yi-sung presented a full dossier. He showed them everything Junho had uncovered. Reginald Cross's fabrication of the leaked documents, the shell company trail, Cross Dominion Health's collapsing financials, Reginald's history of filing frivolous lawsuits against competitors whenever he felt threatened. The pattern was clear and damning. Yi-sung reframed the entire situation. He told his board this was not a Kang family liability. This was an opportunity. An American competitor had tried to weaponize the Kang family name, using their history as a tool of defamation. If the Kang family retreated now, they would be confirming every stereotype the American media was pushing. they would be admitting that the Kang name could be used as a weapon against them by anyone at any time. But if they stood firm, if they refused to be manipulated, they would prove that the Kang name was no longer something to be weaponized. It was something to be respected. The board was silent for a long moment. Then Yi-sung made his boldest move. He offered to stake his personal shares in Kang's syndicate group as collateral against any financial losses from the American lawsuit. He was literally betting his personal fortune, worth hundreds of millions of dollars, on Victoria's integrity and the partnership's success. The board members looked at each other. This was unprecedented. No Kang family CEO had ever put personal assets on the line for a single business deal. His uncle, Chairman Kang D1, stared at Yi-sung through the video screen for what felt like a full minute. The old man's face was unreadable. Finally, he asked one question. "Is this woman worth your name?" Yi-sung did not hesitate. Yes. The board voted. The partnership would continue. Yi-sung would remain CEO. When the video call ended, Yi-sung sat alone in the room and exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. While Yi-sung was fighting his battle in Seoul, Victoria was waging hers in Washington. She hired one of the most aggressive litigation firms in the country. She did not just defend against Reginald Cross's lawsuit. She filed a countersuit for defamation, tortious interference with business relationships, and corporate espionage. She brought every receipt, every document, every digital trail. And she had one more weapon, Trenton Pierce. Trenton, facing the very real possibility of disbarment and criminal charges for his role in the data alteration, agreed to cooperate. He provided a full sworn deposition detailing everything: how Reginald recruited him, how the money was transferred, how the documents were altered, how the entire scheme was orchestrated from Reginald's office in Naples. Victoria's legal team filed Trenton's deposition, along with the forensic evidence and the shell company documentation, as part of their motion to dismiss Reginald's lawsuit. The federal judge reviewed the filings and did not take long to decide. He threw out Reginald's lawsuit entirely, calling it a weaponization of the legal system designed to harass and destroy a legitimate competitor. He referred Reginald Cross for potential sanctions and notified federal prosecutors that the evidence suggested possible criminal conduct by Cross Dominion Health. Within 3 weeks, Reginald Cross was finished. His board forced him to resign. Cross Dominion Health's stock collapsed. Investors pulled out. Partners canceled contracts. The company that Reginald had spent decades building was in freefall, and it was entirely self-inflicted. Victoria did not destroy him. His own greed, jealousy, and arrogance did. But Victoria was not finished. In a move that nobody saw coming, Victoria's team identified 3 premium hospital facilities that Cross Dominion Health was now desperate to sell as part of their financial collapse. 2 in Coral Gables, Florida. 1 in Bellevue, Washington. State-of-the-art facilities in some of the wealthiest communities in the country. Grant Medical Holdings acquired all 3 at a fraction of their market value. Victoria sent Reginald Cross a one-line email after the deal closed. "You should have matched my terms." She never heard from him again. That evening, Victoria flew to Manhattan. She took a car to the Greenwich Hotel in Tribeca where Yi-sung was staying. She walked through the lobby, took the elevator to the top floor, and knocked on his door. When he opened it, she did not say hello. She did not talk about the lawsuit or the acquisition or the board vote in Seoul. She looked at him with those deep brown eyes that had stared down every challenge the world had ever thrown at her and said one thing. "You bet your name on me." Yi-sung looked at her. His expression was calm, but his eyes were not calm at all. "I bet my name on us," he said. Victoria stepped forward, put her hands on either side of his face, and kissed him. It was their first kiss. It was slow, deliberate, not rushed or desperate. It was 2 people who had been circling each other for months finally closing the distance. His hands settled on her waist. Her fingers slid into his hair. The world outside the door did not exist. When they finally pulled apart, Victoria rested her forehead against his and closed her eyes. "I am terrified," she whispered. "I know," he said. "So am I." "Good," she said. "Then we are in this together." 6 months later, the world looked different. The Kang Syndicate and Grant Medical Holdings partnership was fully operational. Their joint biotech initiative was live across premium medical facilities in Beverly Hills, Atherton, Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, Coral Gables, and Bellevue. The technology was revolutionary. AI-driven diagnostics that caught diseases earlier. Surgical precision tools that reduced operating times and improved patient recovery rates. Patient monitoring systems that were saving lives in ways the American healthcare industry had never seen before. Victoria was featured on the cover of Forbes. The headline read, "The Woman Who Cannot Be Broken." The article detailed her rise from Bridgeport to building a healthcare empire, surviving corporate sabotage, and emerging stronger than ever. It mentioned the Kang partnership. It mentioned Yi Sung. It mentioned the press conference where the whole world saw the way they looked at each other. Victoria read the article once, nodded, and went back to work. But she had changed. Not in the way the world could see. She was still sharp, still commanding. Still the woman who could fire board members before lunch and shut down hostile takeovers before dinner. She still walked into rooms with that click of her heels and that calm, devastating confidence that made people straighten up before she even opened her mouth. But privately, in the spaces she used to keep locked and empty, something was different. She let Yi Sung in. Not all at once, not in a dramatic collapse of walls. Slowly, carefully, one truth at a time. She told him about her childhood in Bridgeport, about the apartment with the peeling wallpaper and the radiator that only worked half the time, about watching Lorraine come home from night shifts so exhausted that she would fall asleep at the kitchen table with her shoes still on, about the promise Victoria made to herself at 14 years old, sitting on the fire escape outside her bedroom window, that she would build something so big that no one in her family would ever struggle again. She told him about the loneliness, the years of choosing work over everything else, the relationships she never started because starting them would mean someone could get close enough to slow her down, the pride she felt in her independence and the quiet, unspoken ache that lived underneath it that she had never admitted to anyone. Yi Sung listened to every word. He never interrupted. He never tried to fix it or offer advice. He just listened, the way he always had, with his full attention and his steady eyes and that quiet presence that made Victoria feel like she could say anything and it would be held safely. He told her things too, about growing up as the heir to the Kang family legacy, the loneliness of it, the weight of a name that people either feared or wanted to exploit, the childhood spent learning that emotions were liabilities, the decades of being surrounded by people who served him, respected him, followed his orders, but never truly knew him. The way his grandmother was the only person who ever told him it was okay to want something just because it made him happy, not because it was strategic. They understood each other in a way that neither of them had ever been understood before. Not because they were the same. They were not. She was fire and he was stone. She moved fast and he moved deliberately. She fought with words and he fought with silence. But underneath all of that, they were built from the same thing: discipline, sacrifice, the refusal to be broken, and the secret hope, buried so deep it scared them both, that maybe there was someone out there who would see everything they were and not look away. On a warm Saturday afternoon, Victoria did something she had been putting off for weeks. She took Yi Sung to Bridgeport to meet her mother. They drove from Stamford in Yi Sung's car. Victoria was quiet for most of the drive, which was unusual. She drummed her fingers on the armrest. She adjusted her hair 3 times. Yi Sung noticed all of it and said nothing. He just drove. Lorraine's house was on a tree-lined street in a modest neighborhood. It was small, clean, well-kept. The porch had 2 rocking chairs and a pot of flowers that Lorraine tended every morning. Lorraine opened the front door and saw her daughter standing on the porch next to a tall Korean man in a cashmere coat. She looked at Victoria. Victoria looked nervous, which made Lorraine smile because she had seen her daughter on television, staring down reporters and federal lawsuits without a single sign of discomfort. But standing on her mother's porch with a man she cared about, Victoria Grant was nervous. Lorraine invited them in and asked Yi Sung if he drank sweet tea. "I do not," he said. but I would like to learn." Lorraine smiled and said, "Good answer." Over the next 3 hours, Yi-sung sat at Lorraine's kitchen table and listened to stories about Victoria that no Forbes article would ever contain. He learned that Victoria used to practice speeches in front of the bathroom mirror when she was 7 years old, that she argued with a teacher so effectively in 6th grade that the teacher actually changed the grading rubric, that she once organized a neighborhood petition at age 12 to get the city to fix the streetlights on their block, and she won. Lorraine laughed while she told the stories. Yi-sung laughed with her. Victoria covered her face with her hands and groaned and told her mother she was doing too much. But she was smiling, really smiling, the kind of smile that reached her eyes and stayed there. When they were getting ready to leave, Lorraine pulled Victoria aside in the hallway while Yi-sung waited on the porch. Lorraine took her daughter's hands and looked at her with the kind of knowing that only a mother who has watched her child grow from a stubborn little girl into an unstoppable woman can have. "He looks at you the way your father used to look at me," Lorraine said softly. "Like you are the answer to a question he has been asking his whole life." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. She hugged her mother and held on tight. Lorraine rubbed her back the way she had when Victoria was small and said, "You deserve this, baby. Let yourself have it." 3 weeks later, Yi-sung arranged something Victoria did not see coming. He told her they were attending a private celebratory dinner for the partnership's 6-month milestone. She agreed without thinking much of it. She put on a deep burgundy dress, pulled her hair back, and drove to the venue. The venue was in Stamford, the same building where the healthcare summit had taken place, where they first met, where he walked up to her and told her he disagreed with her keynote, and she looked into his eyes for 4 seconds instead of her usual 2. Victoria walked through the door and stopped. The room was transformed, white flowers everywhere, soft golden lighting, music playing low in the background, and standing in the room were the people she loved most in the world. Deendra, who was already crying and they had not even started yet. Lorraine, who was holding a tissue and smiling. Fiona Park, members of her team. Junho, standing in the corner with his usual unreadable expression but wearing what might have been a small smile. And in the center of the room, standing in a perfectly fitted black suit with his hands clasped in front of him, was Yi-sung. Next to him stood an older Korean man with silver hair and a commanding presence. Chairman Kang Di-won, Yi-sung's uncle. He had flown in from Seoul. Victoria looked around the room. Her mind moved fast, the way it always did, processing, analyzing, figuring out the situation. Then she looked at Yi-sung's face, and she knew. He stepped toward her. The room went quiet. "I spent my entire life believing that strength meant standing alone," he said. His voice was steady, but there was emotion underneath it that Victoria could feel in her own chest. "The Kang family name demanded it. Power demanded it. I thought that was the cost. Solitude at the top." He paused. "Then I met a woman from Bridgeport, Connecticut, who showed me that real strength is not standing alone. It is choosing someone and standing with them even when the whole world tells you not to." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small black box. He lowered himself to one knee. Victoria's hand went to her mouth. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, not just any ring, a custom-designed piece that combined a traditional Korean gold band with a brilliant diamond set in a vintage style. Victoria recognized the style immediately. It was inspired by her grandmother's ring, a ring Lorraine kept in a jewelry box on her bedroom dresser. A ring Victoria used to hold up to the light as a little girl and dream about the kind of life where she would wear something like it. Yi-sung had learned about the ring from Lorraine. He had asked her about it weeks ago during a phone call Victoria knew nothing about. He had a jeweler in Soulcraft, a ring that honored both his heritage and hers. "Victoria Grant," he said, "will you marry me?" The room was silent. Everyone was watching. Victoria looked at this man on one knee. This man who fought his own board of directors for her, who put his personal fortune on the line to protect her integrity, who held her hand in the back of a car and did not ask her to need him, only to let him stand beside her, who sat at her mother's kitchen table and drank sweet tea he did not like and laughed at stories about a 7-year-old girl practicing speeches in a bathroom mirror. She felt the fear. That deep, unfamiliar terror of loving someone so completely that losing them would break something inside her that no amount of success or money or power could ever rebuild. But this time, she did not run from it. "Yes," she said. The room erupted. Deendra screamed so loud Junho actually flinched. Lorraine covered her face with both hands and sobbed happy tears into her tissue. Fiona clapped and wiped her eyes. The team cheered. Chairman Kang Di-won gave a slow, dignified nod of approval that, in the Kang family, meant more than any standing ovation. Yi-sung slid the ring onto Victoria's finger. She looked down at it. Korean gold and American diamond. 2 legacies, 2 histories, 1 ring. She pulled him to his feet and kissed him, and the room cheered louder. Later that night, long after the champagne and the toasts, and the speeches and the moment where Deendra grabbed the microphone and threatened to tell the entire room about the time Victoria cried at a Pixar movie, which Victoria denied, and which Deendra had photographic evidence of, they stepped outside. The Connecticut night was cool. The stars were sharp and clear above the Stamford skyline. The noise from inside the venue was muffled, far away, just the 2 of them standing in the night air. Victoria looked at Yi-sung. The ring on her finger caught the light. "You want to know something I have never told anyone," she said. He looked at her, waiting the way he always waited, patient, present, fully hers. "For 29 years, I was afraid of nothing," she said. "No boardroom, no opponent, no obstacle, no loss ever made me flinch. I built my entire life around being the woman who could not be shaken." She paused. "But you terrify me, because you made me realize that the scariest thing in the world is not losing a fight. It is finding someone worth fighting for and knowing that your life will never be the same without them." Yi-sung pulled her close. She rested her head against his chest and felt his heartbeat, steady and strong, the way everything about him was steady and strong. "That is not fear," he said quietly. "That is love, and it is the only thing in the world stronger than both of us." Victoria closed her eyes. For the first time in her life, she was not strategizing. She was not planning her next move. She was not bracing for the next attack or calculating the next risk or building the next wall. She was just still. Completely, peacefully still. She was a boss lady who feared nothing. Until the Korean mafia boss made her fear losing him forever. And in the end, she never had to.